Hello, this is Yaakov Kronenberg from Jerusalem, and tonight we'll be doing another class in our series of classes on Gemini ascendant with the ruling planet Mercury and the different signs. Tonight we'll be doing Mercury and Scorpio. It's a complex combination. Again, because Scorpio and Gemini are not connected by a major aspect. And so they don't know how to relate to each other, basically, because Gemini is is quite superficial and is interested in many things. It's the jack of all trades, a master of none. The Gemini likes to, dabble in a million different things, and so it's different than the Scorpio. The Scorpio is a tremendous fixity, tremendous ability to go into depth on one type of subject. They can spend their whole lives analyzing one thing. And so it can be a complex proposition to square the circle between these two signs. And so the person has to work hard at it and figure out a way how to do it. When you have Scorpio, when you have Mercury in Scorpio, of course Mercury will fall in the 6th house of the chart, which is the house of servitude. So the person is not going to have, in a certain way, he's not going to have a very, he's not going to have that, he's going to think of himself more as a servant than as a ruler, a lord, right? It's more of a mentality that he came into the world to serve and to help people, more than he's going to be a leader or something like that. Tonight we're going to do the horoscope of a very famous man who has this position. He used to sign his name in small letters, right? He did and that was because a sign of humility, right? The sign of the servitude. So that when the person has the ruling planet in the 6th house, you have this more service mentality. But you'll see, he was not actually a servant. He was a writer, author. We'll come back to that though. And right now, so when you have Scorpio, when you have the Mercury in Scorpio, there's going to be an interest in a very intellectual type of a sign. It's good for knowledge. A person uses his mind to go deeply into things when you have the Mercury in Scorpio. Scorpio is, like we said, he's very, very, he wants to understand things, Scorpio, wants to get to the depth of things, and so it's a nice combination. But it's a little difficult having, when you have Scorpio, when you have the Mercury in the 6th house, it can indicate some kind of mental troubles or health troubles connected to the mind, or Mercury actually has a connection to the mind, the thought, thinking process. It's connected to the lungs, the intestines. It can cause, problems with those areas of the human body. We're going to see again, like I said, tonight we're going to do a very famous poet. Let's start now a little bit. His name was E. Cummings, a very famous American poet. His father was a professor at Harvard University. He studied there, and he always wanted to be a poet from an early age. You look at his chart; he's got that Mercury exactly conjoined to Uranus, which is very, very powerful conjunction, makes him very, very bright. Always Mercury-Uranus conjunctions are a sign of genius, right? He was a very brilliant man. It's interesting, when you have it in the 6th house, it could indicate mental problems. I actually have a couple clients in my file that have Mercury-Uranus tightly conjunct in the 6th house that have been on medication for years or have been in mental hospital, stuff like that, because of their aberrations in their mind. But here's a man who actually had a very good mind, even though it's in the 6th house. and so it gave him brilliance. If you look at his chart, you'll see it's also, the Mercury also gets a very nice aspect from Jupiter, a trine from Jupiter, as also does the Uranus, and so that improves it somewhat. And the disposer of both of those planets is exalted, right? The Scorpio. No, excuse me, I made a mistake. Forget that. Well, the disposer is in honor in any case. The disposer of that is Mars, and Mars is an honor, which sort of picks that up a little bit. But in any case, so he was a very, he was an unusual man. He had a lot of idiosyncrasies. Somebody who has the ruling planet in conjunct Uranus is going to be very freedom-loving. They're going to be very... You see, I want to say one thing before that about his not mental illness. He didn't have mental illness. Why? Because he had great respect for his parents. It's unusual. His father was a professor. He tremendously admired his father and his mother. And he was like really, grateful for the background that he came. And so a person has really a good childhood, it can overcome a lot of bad indications in a horoscope. You see a horoscope like that with the Mercury Uranus. Today I would see a horoscope like that, and somebody claims some parents were divorced and this and all sorts of strange stuff. Then I would I'd be more inclined to say the Mercury Uranus is going to make the person a little bit crazy because of being in the sixth. But here's a case where we see, because he had such a solid background, which is what I see. If you look at his chart, he has the sun there in Libra, tight conjunction to Saturn and Venus. It gave him a strong base in life, a strong artist. That's where all the artistic ability comes from too. You see, he's got those three planets there in Libra. The Venus is in honor, and Saturn is exalted in Libra, and the sun is there. It's going to give him a lot of fame, a lot of success, and he had a lot of talent. You see that in his chart. And of course he had the very, very strong outer planets. He has Pluto and Neptune on the ascendant, and like we said, he's got the ruling planet conjunct the Mercury. So he had a very freedom-loving type of life. He traveled immensely. He, of course, also had 2 or 3 marriages. He had 2 marriages, short sort of affairs. One with his first one was with a married woman, his friend's wife, who eventually divorced her husband to marry him, and they got divorced after about 9 months. And then another short marriage of a couple of years, and then he had a third relationship that lasted many, many years, but it's questionable if they were married or not. The historians who checked his life are not sure. But in any case, he was very freedom-loving, had a lot of eccentricities, because he had the 2 outer planets on the ascendant, and Uranus conjunct his Mercury, so he spent his life traveling the world and writing poetry and everything. But in the end, he actually, if you look at his chart, you see again with that Mercury there conjoined Uranus. Eventually, he did die of a cerebral hemorrhage, right? Because of the Mercury being so closely connected in a bad house. They were almost exactly conjunct. And eventually it did cause his death. So in any case, I thank everybody for listening and hope they enjoyed the class.